All right, welcome. We are here, and we are now going to talk about the ENTJ. This is an absolutely powerful archetype. The functions that you utilize are designed with this personality type for you to assert yourself, for you to create an impact on the external world. This is a function that is social, but that is also focused on efficiency, which means they're not just going to be talking to just to talk. Generally, they're talking for a reason. Like what they're talking to you because they want to get to know who you are to see if there's any value that you may be able to bring that they can bring. They're always forward moving, and ENTJs are just such a powerful type. So we're gonna just delve into the functions and some of the different information. So number one, ENTJs are dynamic and determined individuals who will excel in leadership roles. So the ENTJ, um, they are very independent in the sense of they really tend to focus on their goals that are personal to them. um, they are very goal oriented, but they will do whatever is necessary, and they're always willing to share information, and that's what makes them a really cool type. And that's what makes them good leaders is that they're good at putting people in positions to succeed, and they're going to take the most efficient measures to get to where they want to go. And so when we speak on that, I think it just speaks to their ability to manage people and um, move toward their goals. You know what I mean? So that's going to be big. They thrive in environments that allow them to leverage their strategic thinking and decisive nature. So this is a very decisive type. Let's just be clear. ENTJs very decisive. Their goal is to make decisions to move forward to get towards their targets, and they want to utilize the most effective and, as I mentioned, efficient means to get there, which makes them very strategic. Uh, it's like playing chess. You're constantly trying to position yourself to get the best outcome based on what you put out. ENTJs are naturally great at that, and they have a hard drive. Like they're decisive and action oriented. You know what I mean? They have extroverted sensing as a third function. So if you pair extroverted sensing with extroverted thinking, which we'll talk about a little bit further, what you'll see is they are thinking on how to move forward in reality in life, which means they are going to take the measures necessary on the ground level to get to where they need to get. They have that primal side. They want to have things. They want to be successful. They want to experience life, and they take it head on. And so you'll feel that. You'll see that passion, that extroverted sensing is there where they want to explore. They want to test themselves. They want to test the limits. ENTJs have that within them. They trust their judgment and are not afraid to make tough decisions, even in the face of uncertainty. So they actually feel more comfortable making a decision than not being sure and letting things play out. That's what makes them so decisive. They get a form of comfort in being able to be decisive. And so that means they like things to be planned. Um, they have a side to them that likes to be organized, um, making the intelligent decisions moment to moment to put themselves in the best position. That's what ENTJs are all about. So if you are an ENTJ, if you know ENTJs, I mean, you're given a gift, which is introverted intuition. Number one, that gift is incredible because it's always focused on the next best thing, the next best move to make. And when you pair that with extroverted thinking, you're very objective about it. You're not too personal about it. Your feelings aren't too involved with the decision. Now, of course, you have feelings, and those do play a role. But compared to other types, you probably have some of the best tools to manage emotions to make the tough decisions. And that's once again a characteristic that makes you a leader. And so when you look at these characters here, some of them are villain characters. Some of them are superhero characters. Some of them are executives. Like this is an executive from The Devil Wears Prada. She was very decisive, making effects in the external world that were grand. Uh, very picky, because one thing with introverted intuition is it seeks perfection. So anything that is not perfect, it sticks out to them, which makes them they're always digging and digging to get the perfect final product. And so with a character like the lady here from The Devil Wears Prada, she had that same kind of mentality, forward moving. Feelings aren't necessarily the most important thing. What's most important is providing the best product. And with all of these leaders, they all have different styles. But one thing you'll notice is they all are decisive. They all trust themselves, and they're all willing to, take action to make things happen. All right. So the ENTJ, they're very dynamic, and what makes them so dynamic is they're very rational in terms of their thinking. They're a thinking dominant type. They say what's on their mind. They're constantly um, utilizing their thinking when it comes to decisions. And that's what makes them unique, is that feelings, they have a certain way of being able to manage feelings in terms of them getting things done. Now, they have their moments where they feel very deeply because they have introverted feeling fourth, but introverted feeling is such a strong function. So what it does is it kind of drives them, and that's where sometimes they can have these outbursts or these moments of being annoyed, frustrated, because they're suppressing that feeling. But nonetheless, their communications will be logical, and generally their goal is to um, create the best outcome for the group. I think one of the big things with ENTJs is because they are dynamic and they do think uniquely and they are very decisive. A lot of the work for them is going to be taking other people's perspectives and incorporating other people even if they don't agree, and also just being able to figure out how to communicate in ways that allow them to still remain calm and not um, step on anybody else's, you know, viewpoint in a way that could be considered, negative. ENTJs, think about it. If you are this decisive, you have this introverted intuition that seeks perfection. You're moving towards your target. Because introverted feeling is fourth, you don't have the time to like be managing people's feelings at the same rate, because all right, you're focused on making it toward the target, whatever means that might require. You understand the harsh reality of what it's going to take, so you're going to make sure that your team is understands that as well, and you're decisive, so you're making decisions, and you want to go in the direction that you believe in. So when working with other people, when your introverted feeling is fourth and your extroverted feeling is last, which we'll talk about further, it puts you in a position where you're a leader, you're very successful, but you just have to manage the feelings and make sure that you stay true to yourself, and don't allow the target or the goal to stray you from your values and staying morally grounded. So that's very important for ENTJs to keep that in mind. They are driven by efficiency and forward movements. We talked about that. They have strong willpower and are very decisive, and they're generally highly ambitious and high achieving. So one thing that's pretty funny is ENTJs were actually, based on statistics, they were reported as the type with the highest net worth or the highest income, yearly in terms of annual income. So these types, amongst all the MBTI types, tend to be able to become successful at a very rapid level, and they're able to reach certain heights because they're so good at locking in on their target, blocking everything else out, taking the hard steps that need to be taken to get there, and just funneling everything out and not letting emotions block them from where they want to go. And those ingredients make you very powerful. Now, does it make you the most likable person? And so a lot of people will like you, and what it does is it makes you a leader. But obviously, at the same time, that can rub other people wrong. But guess what? ENTJs, generally, that's not a problem for them, because once again, their priority is that NI, that introverted intuition target, and their extroverted thinking rational means to do it. Everything else is almost like blocking their forward movement. And That's what makes them very successful. So as you can see here, it's Bill Gates, obviously known to be very successful. And let's take a look at him and some of the other ENTJs and how they present themselves.
Notable philanthropist, of course, but much of this aid is government aid. Why is it the business of taxpayers in the United States or in Britain or anywhere else in Europe or anywhere else in the world to spend money on poorer people in poorer countries?
Well, you have to decide, do the lives, say, in Africa have any value or not? Do we as we see them starving, not having enough nutrition, not having access to vaccines, having disease there's that, more money is spent on solving baldness than spent.
All right, so this is concerned with analysis and thought for the experience of stretching his own perspectives and predicting possibilities. So what you'll notice is analysis. He's giving an example of a scenario playing out, which is very much an introverted intuition thing, creating an idealism, a vision of what, which is basically telling the story of why he's doing what he's doing and using that as well to capture other people. So let's see how he explains. And he's very objective about it. These people in Africa, he's not really using a lot of feeling to try to woo the person like the previous two types, the ENTJ and INFJ. They're using more emotion and more emotive, communicative, making people laugh. He's more so going straight into the logic of it. So let's watch this again. Let's see.
Britain or anywhere else in Europe or anywhere else in the world to spend money on poorer people in poorer countries?
Well, you have to decide, do the lives, say, in Africa have any value or not? Do we as we see them starving, not having enough nutrition, not having access to vaccines, having disease there's that, more money is spent on solving baldness than spent on a disease that kills 1 million children. Does that bother us or not? Are we willing to take, in the case of the UK, less than 2% of all government spending and have it go towards the very poorest, which in fact is very generous?
You could completely alter the picture of the world if you went for a genuine redistributive mechanism in taxation.
You mean like North Korea?
No, I don't mean like North Korea. I mean,
now that is definitely ENTJ style, and I don't know if Bill Gates is an ENTJ. Once again, like I say with these videos, I'm just looking at the characteristics, but he went to, all right, one thing that ENTJs and INTJs both do, because you have NI, which is anticipating what's next, and you have extroverted thinking, which is just an objective overall. Like, this is what the whole thing sums up to, essentially. It's looking to find out the most efficient way to explain difficult situations, like any situation. It's looking for an efficient way to explain it. Now, when you pair those two, saying these objective hard truths, like that's what extroverted thinking does. What happens is there's times where you'll just be like, oh, so you're saying this? And the person's like, that's not what I'm saying, because whatever they're saying might be more of a detailed individual description, but because they want to generalize and they're seeing where things are going, they're like, this is what you're trying to do, or this is what you're trying to say overall. Very predictive. You notice with introverted intuition and extroverted thinking, it's this jumpy nature. It has a hard time holding its tongue, because extroverted thinking, that's what it does, right? It's communicating thoughts and trying to bounce off the other person's thoughts. So what you'll notice is that's what happened there. He blurted it out, tried to do that predictive, communication. But the thing is, he used extroverted thinking, which means it was like a big generalization that he threw out. ENTJs do that a lot. And that just gives you a clue into how their mind is. They move quick. It's quick judgments. This is what's this. This is what's that. So that's what makes them good leaders. But you also can see how things can be misinterpreted at times, or they can assume things. And that's kind of cool that you get to see that.
Which in fact is very generous.
You could completely alter the picture of the world if you went for a genuine redistributive mechanism in taxation.
So he's saying if you did something with taxation, that's what he's communicating. What Bill Gates is seeing, oh, well, that's what North Korea did, and they turned out this way. Now, we don't know the details of what North Korea did in terms of if I'm pretty sure as he's explaining this, it's not going to be the same exact model as what North Korea does. But at the end of the day, when he sums it up, that's the most efficient way to explain the reason why he's not doing that. And he's going to use this one quick example to get the point across. So you see, he's using efficient language to communicate his point because they're that efficiency, that wanting to move forward, that wanting to get to the point and the root of things.
You mean like North Korea?
No, I don't mean like North Korea. I mean by democratic consent.
Well, yeah,
you could do that.
You could adopt. Yeah, we have many democracies. They all have different taxation policies. The Nordic countries have certain taxation policies. The UK has different ones. I'm not an expert on any but the US.
Would you favor in the US a higher rate of personal taxation?
Yes.
To what level?
Now the answer, that's a good answer, like that you got to see.
Notable philanthropy.
Because what you got to see in that moment is ENTJs, and INTJs, by the way, they have extroverted sensing. So what it does is they're saying whatever is going on right now. There's not going to be too much elaborating unless that's what's needed. But they'll answer questions like yes, no, I don't know. Like the point is, like they're giving you flat, direct, efficient answers.
Korea?
No, I don't mean like North Korea. I mean by democratic consent.
Well, yeah,
you could do that.
You could adopt. Yeah, we have many democracies. They all have different taxation policies. The Nordic countries have certain taxation policies. The UK has different ones. I'm not an expert on any but the US.
Would you favor in the US a higher rate of personal taxation?
Yes.
To what level?
That's fairly complicated to pick an exact level, but I've been a big proponent of the estate tax, and I do believe that.
So he couldn't pick an exact level because he doesn't want to project too far. So one thing that you got to understand with introverted intuition, which is what ENTJs have, and extroverted sensing, he's predicting where things are going day by day. Like this is where things are going in the immediate future. When it comes to making far-reaching predictions, that's when they begin to be like, hey, look, this is outside of my realm, because that's more of an extroverted intuition thing. So just keep that in mind.
Income on capital, we could tax that a bit higher.
And when you saw the results of the Senate investigation into Microsoft's tax affairs and the allegation that about $4 million worth of taxes a day wasn't being paid because of the way that Microsoft managed their affairs, what did you think?
I think that's about as incorrect a characterization of anything I've ever heard.
It was the allegation that was made.
No, it's just simply
incorrect allegation of anything I've ever heard. So what you're seeing there's some exaggeration necessarily in that communication, but you can see the introverted feeling that's fueling him to be like, this is absolutely ridiculous, but it's still being expressed logically. He's not exhibiting a lot of emotion, but you can see the emotion underneath boiling, and he's using descriptive extroverted thinking language to try to communicate how ridiculous what the person's saying.
Hogwash.
Okay, which aspect is hogwash?
The idea that Microsoft didn't pay its taxes.
It's not that Microsoft didn't pay taxes, it's that they could have paid more taxes.
Once again, he said a general statement, and then the guy comes in and say, well, he's basically saying that's a general statement. He's trying to get to the root of it. So this other person probably has introverted thinking, extroverted feeling. They're trying to get really detailed using specific communication to describe specific things. But the ENTJ, once again, is looking at the overall communication as an attack on the company and on the, and accusing the company of certain things. And so you're noticing he's not playing the politically correct extroverted feeling, introverted thinking communication. He's direct communications. When he doesn't agree, he's direct about the fact that he doesn't agree. Everything is very direct. And instead of using overly expressive emotional communication, he's using overly expressive words to describe what he's feeling versus actually displaying the emotion.
Voluntarily?
Yes, by choosing to organize their affairs differently rather than running them through Puerto Rico.
Your numbers are just completely wrong. So,
all right, let me put it another way. As a statement of principle, are you in favor of people paying as much tax as possible?
I think that if your government should pass the tax laws that they need in order to collect the revenue they want to collect. I don't think, saying that people should volunteer to pay taxes is likely to raise that much. It can be tried, but the rules are set. I paid more taxes than any individual ever, and gladly so. I should pay more, but I paid over $6 billion in taxes.
How do you persuade people that it's their political or moral duty to pay more tax in order that there can be some sort of redistribution?
You make sure that they follow the law and pay their taxes. If they don't, you put them in jail. It seems to work.
There you go. Once again, you could view that as an overly general solution. And you could also, like I said, you could see the lack of introverted feeling, right? It's like, we'll just send them to jail. Like, who cares? But it's not because of these evil people who don't care. It's just from an efficiency standpoint, and the quickest way I can think off of my feet of what to do, this is the quickest thing that comes to mind. But you can see different characteristics in there for the ENTJ, which is quite interesting. So let's move on to the next slide here. All right, so strengths and weaknesses. Okay, let me get out of the way here. All right, so as we know, one of the biggest strengths for ENTJs is going to be the strategic vision. They're very strategy focused, mainly because they're trying to figure out the logic and rationale of what is going on. So they're looking at the mechanics of what's going on differently than, let's say, other types. They're looking at it completely objectively and looking at it as pieces that need to be moved around in order for things to operate better. They're looking at it from like a chessboard perspective, and they're making steps every day to create a more better outcome, which requires every day strategically thinking. What do we need to do here? What do we need to do there? So they're always planning about and making and taking steps daily to elevate whatever goal that they're trying to reach. And so that naturally makes them strategic thinkers, and they have the tools to do it. They have extroverted thinking, which is a powerful, powerful thinking function. They're able to look at things very objectively, and they're willing to communicate their goals as well, which makes them people that they can get people to buy into their ideas. They're very influential, and what I'll say is they're very influential. They can influence people. They have that ability to influence, to get people to buy into an idea. So that's big, and that speaks to their strong leadership skills. So that's huge. They're all about efficiency and productivity. They have amazing problem solving abilities because they're constantly able to think, and they have a very unique perspective on certain things, to a certain degree. And they have confidence and assertiveness. So they're willing to, once again, move forward, push their perspective, communicate. They're not afraid of people in the sense of being willing to speak their truth. So that's big. In terms of weaknesses, they can be impatient. That's something that ENTJs are notorious for. They're very blunt. They tell you exactly what they think. Once again, they're not being super feely. They're just saying, this is what I think. So, and that extroverted thinking tells you the overall point of what you think. It's not really focused on the feelings of the person that they're talking to. They're more so just trying to communicate their truths. So a lot of the time that bluntness can be looked at as rudeness, but people got to understand that might be watching this that aren't ENTJs. The ENTJ isn't trying to intentionally, in most cases, be rude or blunt. That they are just trying to be authentic and truthful. So that's one thing to keep in mind. They have a tendency to overlook feelings. Like I said, their feeling function is their lowest function. So it's the hardest one for them to, basically it's getting the least amount of attention out of the other functions. And so naturally. So they have to make an extra effort to be accommodating to everyone's feelings. It's not easy at all. It's difficult. So it's important that you work with them and understand that they have good intentions, and they are not rude people. They are good spirited, positive people. You know, they're nice people. The key thing is um, just making sure to understand that it's not them being rude. It's just the natural communication style. They can have difficulty delegating. Some of this is because they can be focused so much on doing a lot on themselves and taking on a lot. The other thing is that they can have difficulty delegating because having to communicate with so many different people, manage so many different people's emotions is hard. You know, if you left it up to most ENTJs, they'd like to be like, hey, just do this, this, and that. Like, and let me know when it's done. But you know, people was like, oh, you just tell them, you know, people can respond to certain ways. So it makes the task of being efficient, it's like that's the part that slows it down. They're constantly having to manage people's emotions, manage people's feelings, and that can be very taxing. And then they have the risk of burnout. And that's because they just go really hard. The tasks that they do, the things that they put their passion in, um, they're going to go all out. And so, in that pursuit, a lot of things can be sacrificed. That could be relationships, things like that. So, it's very important to understand that with ENTJs, um, you know, it's important to stay grounded, to stay balanced, to focus on self care, because that will also help you. Because if you burn out, it also increases the likeliness of you being irritated, and now you can have a 2-in-1 where you're exhausted, and then the people that you're working with, you're going to have friction with them because you know that exhaustion can come out in your work. So it's very important to understand that, and it will be very helpful for you to really focus on self care. That's going to be big. And just to show you what happens when ENTJs aren't managing their self care, this is what it will look like. And this awesome. We get to actually watch a video from the Devil's Wears Prada, and you can see how it affects their ability to move forward. I mean, to operate when they're really stressed out.
Oh, there you are. We need to go over the seating chart for the luncheon. Okay. Yeah, sure. I have it right here. By all means, move at a glacial pace. You know how that thrills me.
So as you can see, she's obviously dealing with some inner issue, some personal problem. But you notice she's getting irritated, impatient, and taking little shots at the person who's working for her because of this frustration. So it can really play out as being passive aggressive at times.
Okay. So, first of
So this is
all,
important with once again when it says risk of burnout, things like that, and tending to overlook their feelings. You'll notice that they are working, in order to get away from the feelings that she's having. She's trying to work to distract herself. So that's going to show you that they can bury themselves in their work because at least they're moving forward in something. And so, work is something that can really negatively affect their relationship. But even when the relationship they go through a breakup or a super tough situation, she's not even giving herself the time to relax, check on her feelings, try to regroup. Instead, she's just working, working, working. Next step, okay, well, we got to get somebody else at my table now instead of this person because I don't have a date now. But everything's forward moving. And at times it's like, man, don't forget to manage yourself and how you feel.
we need to move Snoop Dogg to my table.
Mm-hmm.
But your table's full. Stephen isn't coming. Oh, Stephen is. So I don't need to get Stephen from the airport tomorrow? Well, if you speak to him and he decides to rethink the divorce, then yes, fetch away. You're very fetching. So, go fetch.
Now, obviously, that wasn't the nicest. So you can see, in their worst state, they can be very rude, very, you know, just unhappy, bringing people down, taking digs at people, and those type of things is what can isolate them. And what happens is, but look, once again, even amidst that, she's okay, we're going to put this person at the table because she's still thinking about tomorrow. She's not allowing herself to think about now. And that's a big thing for the ENTJs out there. You have to practice not always being ahead of the situation and having to be on top of everything emotion, like, oh, everything's good. Now we're doing this. It's like allow yourself to um, sit in the situation and understand that actually allows the emotion to pass through. When you're constantly trying to move past the emotions and not acknowledge them and things like that, that's when you end up in a scenario where it comes back later and it's even worse. Or where you're carrying around all this negative energy and it's because you've never allowed them to pass through and express themselves. So understand that's very important.
And then when we get back to New York, we need to contact Leslie. See what she can do to minimize the press on all this. Another divorce. Splashed across page 6. Just imagine what they're gonna write about me. The Dragon Lady. Career obsessed. Snow Queen drives away.
Career obsessed.
Another Mr. Priestley. Rupert Murdoch should cut me a check for all the papers I sell for him. Anyway, I don't really care what anybody writes about me. My girls, it's just so unfair to the girls. Just another disappointment, another letdown, another father figure gone. Anyway, point is,
This is an interesting situation. ENTJs always have it all together, right? That's the impression that they give. Always being that leader, always having it figured out, not showing too much emotion. But in the grip of this moment, that's what's happening. She's expressing her pain, and even amidst that, she doesn't want to give away too much, right? Whereas other types, like extroverted feeling types, they would probably be crying right now, like some of the types that are more feeling dominant. And so an extroverted feeling is more expressive in that type of capacity than introverted feeling in a lot of cases. But introverted feeling as well feels very deeply. So with that being said, she's not crying or breaking down, but she's holding in the pain. You could hear it through the extroverted thinking communications that she's giving. So like we talked about, they're not going to show their emotions necessarily, like wear them in their face where they're crying and being overly emotionally expressive. But what they will do is communicate that very rationally to where you get the feeling that they have, and it's amazing that they can even suppress it that well.
The point is, we really need to figure out where to place Donatella because she's barely speaking to anyone.
Mm-hmm. Not talking about emotions and going right back to work. So there you go. That's a pattern that can happen. And we'll talk about that next, the patterns.
I'm so sorry, Miranda. If you want me to cancel your evening, I can. That'll be ridiculous. Why would we do that? Is there anything else I can do? It's your job.
There we go. So that's big. All right. So now we're going to look at the functional loops. And so the big thing about the functional loops, this is very, very, very important, is that this is the mental map of how you process reality. You know, things filter through these functions. And it doesn't always happen in a linear way where oh, I think intuition, sensing. No. But what's happening is they're all interchangeably, operating, together for you to make decisions. So number one, you have extroverted thinking first. Okay. Then so you're when you're looking at things, you're constantly making judgments based on, you're interacting with the world, you're communicating, you're seeing what's going on, you're making decisions, and your intuition is pushing you forward. So you're making these decisions in the goal of moving forward in a certain direction. Your extroverted sensing is seeing what's going on, and your introverted feeling is is keeping you grounded in the sense of this is how I feel about what's going on. But your first driver is extroverted thinking, and extroverted thinking is all about making uh, making observations and conclusions based on logical information or that we see in the external world. So it's very external driven. They're looking at the things around them and making judgments on them based on what they see. So this type is constantly operating with extroverted thinking, extroverted sensing externally. They're going out, exploring, seeing things, and thinking about like, this is what you would do with this. This is how I view this. This is what I would do with that. Like they're thinking about what's around them and how they would do certain things and what they would do. And so in good situations, these two functions are power functions together because it allows them with extroverted sensing to be in the field. They're outside. They're in the world experiencing. They're willing to experience. But the goal thing that's driving them is their thinking. So they aim to have experiences that will open their perspective, allow them to see more things, and allow them to have more external control. You know what I mean? Introverted intuition now operates with introverted feeling to constantly be focused on a vision that makes them feel good, right? So this is so when we look at their inner world first, or I'm sorry, let's look at their inner world. Their inner world is introverted intuition and introverted feeling. What that tells you is tunnel vision based on what I feel is the best direction for me to go. Now, what's going to make me feel good about the vision I'm going in? Well, that's where this side comes in. Based on the things that they've seen, they want to go and utilize their thinking to get them to that vision. So their extroverted thinking is the tool they utilize to get to where they want to go. And so, with that being said, they're constantly looking at the world non-emotionally, but from a strategic perspective. Now, what happens when they end up in a functional loop? When they end up in a loop, and what happens in these loops is that people get stuck in these loops where they are constantly stuck in a pattern of thought, and it becomes disruptive. When people are going down this constant thought pattern where they can't escape it and it starts taking over, people go through situations where, they are constantly thinking about the same thing. It's racking at their mind. They start to lose themselves and then they go into grip, which is what we saw earlier. So what do you want to avoid to not end up in that grip? To not end up in a scenario where, you're feeling like you're losing your head, you're feeling completely ungrounded, you're feeling chaotic. Like these are the things you don't want. Well, number one, this is a loop that ENTJs tend to get into: extroverted thinking and extroverted sensing. When they're stuck in this loop, they're constantly going out and having experiences, and they're constantly making over generalizations about what they're experiencing, and it puts them in a situation where they're not going with the flow of things. Whenever you're in a scenario where your extroverted thinking is constantly communicating and making judgments and saying overall truths that can be unagreeable for people, it can be a scenario where they can create negative situations with people. And then, but that extroverted sensing still wants to go out, still wants to test the limits. So they could be in a scenario where they're pushing too hard against the environment with whatever they think. And that is a loop where they'll go out, they'll have a negative situation because it's a disagreeable situation. They leave that, and they feel even more upset, and they want to say whatever they think more, and it just creates more chaos. And they still don't want to stop, and they can get stuck in their thinking to where it's like they have to prove a point. They have to prove their objective point to the objective world, and it becomes a scenario where they're fighting the world, where they're taking on the world, and it creates a situation where they end up being isolated. They end up being demonized by people because people look at them in a negative way because they're not factoring in how other people feel. So when you find yourself as an ENTJ in a situation where you might have been coming off rude and you feel isolated, or where you're being in different disagreeable situations, you might need to be like, man, I'm too stuck in how I think, and I'm too stuck in that trying to prove my point to the outer world. You have to build that internal peaceful space to where you don't have to be too engaged in the external world of having to prove your point, having to create external changes because you're so obsessed with going in a certain direction. You have to factor in the feeling element to some capacity to keep yourself grounded. Now, on the other side, where things can go bad, if you have introverted intuition, introverted feeling, you can be in a scenario where you can be only focused on your vision, on your tunnel vision, and whatever makes you feel good, and you block out everything else. And that's where ENTJs can be considered very stubborn, very hard to work with, because they're like, I'm going in this direction, I believe in this, and I don't see nothing else. I don't care about nobody else. I don't, none of those things. And that's when they can come off and be the types where, um, they have negative relationships with people, and in the way of getting in the process of getting toward their goal, they step on different people, which causes them to almost be destructive along the path of getting what they want. So you don't want to be in a scenario. Both of these outcomes will isolate the ENTJ, and that is not good because ENTJs are social. They want to communicate with people. They want to help. They want to make it in their goals and help other people make it in their goals. So if they are isolating themselves because of a lack of care about, or a lack of seeing the bigger picture of the people around them, that's when it can be someone that's greedy or just focused on the money or the success and not caring about the people. And that is one of the things you want to avoid. So you also don't want to end up in scenarios where you're constantly feeling blocked or you can't go forward because you're so stuck on this one target goal and you can't see anything else. So it's important to communicate with other people, get perspective to help balance out your perspective so that you don't end up in a scenario where you're blocked focusing on one thing because you're wrapped up around it and everything else is being burnt around you to the ground because all you can focus on is this one target. So just make sure to communicate with people, keep close people with you that you respect, to help keep you grounded while going after your goals. Because we got to remember, this is a very ambitious type. This is a type that is successful, and that honestly is your gift. But you have to make sure that if you want to get the most out of your gift, you want to make sure to stay grounded in balance, because balance is the key. Balance is the key. Even when you look at these functions, there is a balance to how they work together. There's a reason why there's one leading the way. There's one that's like a secondary. There's this yin and yang going on in our cognitive functions, and that's what's so beautiful. But that's letting us know that we need to operate with balance as well in order to get the most out of our, out of our experience of life. Now, what is the gift of the ENTJ? Let's just get straight to it. The gift of the ENTJ is speed, because they have TE, which is extroverted thinking. So they're constantly thinking of what's the next best thing to do. They're making thinking-based decisions, which means they'll be willing to sacrifice to get to the end goal because that's the logical and most rational thing to do. They're willing to do what it takes from a logical perspective to get to a target goal. They're going to do what needs to be done. And as a result of that, It allows them to get to where they want to go faster than others because, first of all, half of the people have their feelings in the way, blocking them, and then the other group, a lot of them have introverted thinking blocking them because they're so stuck in thinking about a specific detail they can't even get to the overall point. So ENTJs just bypass all the people. Like, all right, your feelings are blocking you, your thoughts are blocking you. I'm just going towards the target and objectively looking up what do I need to do, and I'm going. And so that's what makes them so powerful. And extroverted thinking, what's so beautiful about extroverted thinking is they're not too stuck on their thought independently. They want data. They want objective data and perspectives that will allow them to be comfortable about the thought that they decide to go with. So it isn't like they're going in trying to figure everything out on their own. They're so good at sourcing the most efficient, powerful information and taking means to get that information without having to, without having to just stick with whatever they know. So they're willing to go out there and explore and find the best thought, the best information, and then make the decision. But once they find whatever they perceive as the best information, that's when they become certain. But the beauty of it is they're not just making decisions like, oh, this is what it is now, and that's it. They are willing to communicate to find out what is the best option. But once that is decided, they're moving with speed, right? So that's what's very powerful. And their extroverted sensing paired with the extroverted thinking makes them sharp in the moment. So they are looking in their environment for opportunity. They're not just stuck in their heads looking in the sky and hoping. They are like, let me go outside, let me see who's around me, let me take advantage of what's in my environment and use my thinking to get me what I want in this moment. And that makes them so powerful. They also have a sharp vision and ability to see what will happen next, and that's what makes them wonderful strategists. They're constantly trying to figure out how to get the most out of their situation in the most efficient way. So they really are good at saving time and energy and really focusing on making optimal and really optimizing their time. So they're just good people to have around for that as well. And generally, they want to bring that to the people around them. They want to put people in positions to succeed instead of putting people in positions that aren't helpful. And then, if you want to move forward, a goal or to a goal or get to a certain destination quickly, the ENTJ is the best type to do so. I mean, that is why they are known to make the most money out of all the types. It's because they're looking at the game of money, at the game of a career in a different way than the other types, in a way to put them in the best position. It's very outcome driven versus linear driven, meaning it's more than just enjoying the process. They're enjoying the process of being efficient. So that's beautiful because there's other people that will take less efficient actions in order to do something that they like. Oh, I do this because I love it, or I do this because it's like a video game or it's fun. I like to do it because for reasons that don't involve overall objective outcomes. It's like I just like playing this because it's fun. A lot of introverted thinking dominant types, they don't really know what the end goal is, but they're enjoying the process along the way. Extroverted thinking types, especially ENTJs, they're not operating like that. They know exactly why they're doing it, and they know exactly what they're trying to get out of it. And that makes them very powerful because then they don't end up in scenarios where you're spending all this time trying to do something. I mean, you're spending all this time doing something because you love it or because you just, enjoy it. And then 20, 30 years go by and you still don't have a penny to your name and you're struggling because you've been a starving artist all these years, or you've been a person that's been in the sci-fi world, like in your own world, but not making external effects. And that's why, you get paid for making external effects, helping the external world around us, not being in your head. If you want to play video games, things like that, you can do that on your own time. So, but when it comes to the external world, that's where you get really rewarded in this physical world. And that's what ENTJs are all about. So, I mean, that's a huge, huge superpower that a lot of types don't have. And then finally, your hidden power, come on now, it's toughness. And one of the main things that just when it comes to the functions, they have extroverted thinking and they have extroverted sensing third, which means they have that extroverted sensing primal energy. And when you pair that with objective decision making and being willing to communicate, it makes them fierce. They're very strong. They have a presence to them, you know, and they have a resolve like none other because that extroverted sensing and introverted intuition is right in the middle. So they have a very good um, connection with where they are versus where they need to go. They're constantly looking at, all right, this is where I want to go. This is where I'm at. That's like they're doing that back and forth. This is where I want to go. This is where I'm at. And because of that, it makes them they don't they know what it's going to take to have to get to a certain point, and they're not going to play around with that. And that's what makes them so lethal is that they have a unique view of how to get to targets and what it's going to take. You know what I mean? And I think that's really big. Is that you know when it comes to them working on projects, doing certain things, they really will help you and your team be more efficient. They'll help you be more efficient. They'll help you drive you. And they give you that motivation, those blunt realities, those blunt facts. Like, this is what it is. This is what you got to do. This is the reality of the world. So they're very tough. Um, and their thinking powers them forward. So, all those things give them this toughness and this strength that's really fortified by their vision. If you're in their way, nothing's going to stop them. If you're in their way, they will move past you because they know this is where I need to go. This is what's in my way, and they will push their mind forward to get past that person. They lock in on their target and they move. So you got to understand when you pair your speed and toughness together as an ENTJ. A lot of ENTJs don't recognize how tough they are. Some do, but some don't understand the toughness that they have. You have extroverted sensing as a third function. You are very much connected to that primal function, that primal reality. You're willing to fight for what you want. And that is very, very powerful. And you're not going to let people get in your way. Emotions, people's judgments, all those things, they're not stopping you like they stop other people. And that's what makes you so lethal. That's what makes you tough. You're independent. You're willing to think for yourself. You're willing to trust what makes sense to you. And you're willing to go out there and explore and find the information, the best information to get you where you need to go. So, I mean, some ENTJs I've met have just been brilliant. They're just very brilliant people because they are viewing the world with such a unique viewpoint, and they're going to let you know what it's going to take to jump past all the fluff and the blocks and the distractions and really help you get what you want to manifest in this life. And it first begins with them doing it for themselves. So I want to give a shout out to all the ENTJs out there. I hope you learned a lot of information on this. Make sure you watch it again, especially if you're an ENTJ or if you happen to have an ENTJ family member or a friend or whatever. And now we are going to talk about the cousin or the sister, you could say, to the ENTJ, which is the INTJ. And so I will see you in that next video. Once again, ENTJs, be strong, be powerful, utilize your speed, embrace your toughness, and make magic happen in your life. Peace.